What if Jon Snow never joined the Night's Watch? Picture this. A world where Jon Snow, the illegitimate son of Eddard Stark, never left Winterfell to join the Night's Watch. What would happen if he chose to stay home, to grow up among his family, and claim his place as a Stark? This question sends shockwaves through the very fabric of Westeros. Jon Snow's journey, from the Wall to the very heart of the realm, was shaped by his decision to answer the call of the Night's Watch. But without that pivotal choice, everything changes. In the original timeline, Jon's departure to the Wall set off a chain of events that led him to become Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, to fight the wildlings, to face the horrors of the White Walkers, and ultimately to make the ultimate sacrifice. But now, imagine a Westeros without Jon Snow. At Winterfell, Jon grows up surrounded by the warmth of family, not isolated as the bastard son of Lord Stark. In this world, Jon's destiny is no longer tied to the Wall. Instead, he's a Stark of Winterfell in every sense of the word, sharing in the responsibilities of the North. With this change, we see the North's future begin to shift as well, with Robb Stark at the forefront. But what about the rest of Westeros? Without Jon Snow's leadership, the threat beyond the Wall is left unchecked. The Night's Watch faces its most vulnerable point in history. And what are the White Walkers? The greatest threat the realm has ever faced. Without Jon Snow uniting the North and the wildlings, they remain distant, isolated, too far apart to put up a united front when the ancient enemy arrives. In King's Landing, the Lannisters grow bolder. Without Jon's bloodline playing a key role in uniting the Targaryens, the political landscape shifts dramatically. Without the Stark family's voice on the Wall, the South moves further away from the North's cause. And what of Daenerys Targaryen? Her path, once intertwined with Jon's, takes a far different direction in this new world. Could she reclaim the Iron Throne alone? This alternate reality doesn't just change Jon Snow's life. It changes the very course of history. The absence of his presence sets in motion a series of challenges, struggles, and conflicts that will test the entire realm. But who will step up to lead? Who will fight for the living against the darkness? In the world we know, Jon Snow was more than a king in the making. He was a symbol of hope. But in this world, hope might just be lost. As Jon Snow watches his family and the people of Winterfell, something stirs within him. The call of the Wall is gone, but his sense of duty is not. Without the heavy burden of being the bastard of Winterfell, Jon feels accepted, loved by the family that raised him. His bond with Robb, Sansa, and Arya grows stronger, and he steps into his role as a Stark with conviction. It's not long before Robb is called to lead the North. With the looming threat of the Lannisters' growing power in King's Landing and the stirrings of rebellion in the South, the Stark family is thrust into politics, dangerous, unpredictable, and deceitful politics. Jon, now fully integrated as a son of Winterfell, takes part in these discussions. The family, united as never before, stands strong, but the weight of the world presses against them. Meanwhile, beyond the Wall, the winds of change are stirring. Without Jon Snow's presence at the Wall, the Night's Watch struggles. The defenses grow weaker, as fewer men are willing to pledge themselves to a life of isolation. The dangers of the far north, the wildlings, the ancient creatures of the ice, remain largely forgotten. But something stirs in the cold, a force older than any man alive. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen, the last of the bloodline that once ruled Westeros, feels the pressure of her own exile. She begins to rise from the ashes of her past, gathering power as she moves through the cities of Slaver's Bay. But in this reality, her path takes a far different course. The Targaryens have no alliance with the Starks, no bond through Jon Snow. There are no whispers of him being her ally in the fight for the throne, no growing spark of hope that her cause could be united with his. With the Lannisters tightening their grip on the Iron Throne, a different set of forces begins to clash. The political balance shifts dramatically. Cersei Lannister, already cunning and ambitious, seizes her moment to tighten her hold on power. Tyrion is forced to navigate a more dangerous game of survival within his own family, as his sister's ruthless rule knows no bounds. And Robb Stark, Jon's half-brother, continues to lead the North. But in this new world, without Jon Snow's leadership, Robb's strength is tested. The wildlings remain a distant threat, and the White Walkers' approach is left unchallenged. No one in the south realizes the impending doom that lies in the darkness of the far north. No one is prepared for the great war to come. Jon's absence reverberates through the very core of Westeros. With the realm at a crossroads, his decision to stay in Winterfell, to embrace his Stark identity, changes everything. There's no bastard to rise above his station. There's no leader to unite the North. There's no one to fight the battles that are brewing on all sides. But Jon Snow is not idle. His new role in the North shapes him into a different kind of leader. One who rises to protect his family, his home, and the legacy of the Starks. And as whispers of rebellion stir in the South, the true nature of power and leadership begins to reveal itself. But with no Jon Snow at the wall, will the realm fall into chaos before the real fight even begins? Winterfell has never felt more united. Jon Snow, no longer a man bound by his status as a bastard, rises as a force within the Stark family. As Robb Stark leads the North, Jon finds his own path. He's not a warrior bound by honor alone, nor is he a leader driven solely by power. He's a protector, someone who puts his family first. His heart and soul are tied to Winterfell. But this path is not without its challenges. News of the political unrest in the South reaches the North. Cersei Lannister's cruel rule over King's Landing has left a trail of blood and betrayal, and her power continues to grow, unchecked by the influence of the North. With the Lannisters tightening their grip, the once proud Baratheon family's power begins to fracture. Robert Baratheon, weakened by years of indulgence, faces increasing threats to his throne. In Winterfell, Jon watches Robb, his brother in all but name, as he wrestles with the weight of leadership. Robb knows the North must prepare for a potential war. Without Jon by his side to advise him, the responsibilities of leading the North are increasingly difficult. As the Kingdom of the North faces mounting pressure, Jon takes charge of Winterfell's defenses, overseeing the training of the guards and fortifying the castle. At the same time, the threat of the wildlings grows. Though they remain a distant and largely forgotten issue in the South, the tribes beyond the Wall have not gone quiet. Jon Snow's decision to remain in Winterfell means the North will continue to ignore the encroaching danger of the wildlings. The ancient wall, once a symbol of the North's strength, is crumbling. Jon had been the unifying force between the Night's Watch and the wildlings. But now, that fragile alliance is lost. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen's own rise to power follows a different path. In this world, without Jon Snow as a possible ally, her campaign to reclaim the Iron Throne is much more isolated. She conquers the cities of Slaver's Bay and begins to build her forces, but the thought of uniting with the North is nowhere in her mind. She has no reason to believe that the Starks would offer any support. In the shadow of her rebellion, King's Landing remains the political epicenter of the realm. Tyrion Lannister, ever the strategist, understands the growing instability within the Lannister family. Cersei's desperation for power grows more dangerous by the day, and her cruelty knows no bounds. Tyrion realizes that the Lannisters cannot sustain their rule much longer, but in this alternate timeline, he cannot rely on Jon Snow to form any meaningful alliance with the North. The Starks are consumed by their own internal struggles, and the prospect of unity with the South seems ever more distant. As tensions rise in King's Landing, the North faces its own rising threat. Robb Stark, facing a growing rebellion from the South and the continued pressure from the Lannisters, leads his forces in preparation for war. The Northern Lords rally behind him, but with Jon Snow's absence, Robb faces difficulties with rallying the North's full strength. Jon's strategic mind, his unwavering loyalty to his family, and his alliance with the wildlings would have been invaluable, but with him staying behind, Robb must struggle alone. Meanwhile, the cryptic movements of the White Walkers grow ever closer. The true danger of the far north remains ignored. As the darkness begins to spread, no one is watching the wall. Without Jon Snow's presence and the looming threat of the dead, the realm of the living faces an even darker fate. The wildlings, isolated from any alliance, continue to make their way south unimpeded. Mance Rayder, their king beyond the wall, would have never been swayed by Jon Snow's leadership. The wildlings now march, free from any hope of peaceful negotiation. The wall stands empty, the Night's Watch failing to hold the line. The threat from the North is real, and it is coming fast. Jon, meanwhile, focuses his efforts on protecting Winterfell. He grows more politically aware, increasingly involved in the leadership of the North. But every decision he makes carries its weight. The growing tension between the North and South, the brewing war, and the encroaching darkness beyond the Wall are all part of the delicate balance Jon must maintain. His destiny as a Stark becomes clearer, but so does the realization that the North is on the precipice of something greater than any of them can understand. Winterfell's cold winds bite deeper as tensions reach a boiling point. Robb Stark, unable to hold the North together without Jon's strategic guidance, faces a moment of reckoning. Word arrives from the South. War is inevitable. Cersei Lannister, now fully aware of the disarray in the North, sends a force to the Riverlands with the aim of crushing the Stark rebellion. Robb, desperate for help, attempts to rally his bannermen, but the absence of Jon's persuasive presence weakens his efforts. The Northern Lords, always divided in their loyalties, hesitate, unsure of how to proceed without Jon Snow's leadership. As the Lannisters march northward, Robb makes a fateful decision to meet them in battle. But the tide of war has already shifted. Without Jon's counsel, Robb underestimates the strength of the Lannister forces. He sets his sights on an ambitious attack, hoping to strike a blow that will change the course of the war. But it is a trap. The battle is brutal and swift. Robb's forces are crushed, and the future of the North teeters on the brink of collapse. The Lannisters, led by Tywin Lannister, ruthlessly push northward, their victory inevitable. Robb is forced to flee, but not before suffering a terrible personal loss. The killing blow isn't only to the North, it's to Robb's heart. His marriage to the Frey family, once intended to secure a powerful alliance, collapses in betrayal, leaving him shattered and desperate. In this alternate timeline, Jon Snow's absence leaves a gaping void in the North. Robb's leadership is now in question, and the North's rebellion falters. With the Lannisters growing ever bolder, the Starks, once united, begin to splinter. Jon's return to the fold could have been the catalyst that turned the tide of the war, but that chance has passed. Meanwhile, across the Narrow Sea, Daenerys Targaryen's struggle to claim the Iron Throne has become a battle of survival. With no alliance from the North and Jon Snow's absence as a potential unifier, Daenerys faces increasingly insurmountable odds. She has claimed the cities of Slaver's Bay and continues her campaign to build a loyal army, but her forces are small compared to the might of King's Landing. Daenerys' vision of ruling Westeros feels more like a distant dream, fading with every passing day. The political landscape is shifting, and her desire to reclaim the throne is just as urgent as ever. But the real turning point comes when Daenerys receives a troubling message. A betrayal is unfolding in Westeros. Tywin Lannister has tightened his control over King's Landing, and Cersei's cruelty knows no bounds. Yet Tyrion Lannister, ever the schemer, knows that the key to dismantling the Lannister regime is hidden in the North. With the North fractured and Jon Snow absent, the path to reclaiming the Iron Throne is growing ever more uncertain. Back in Winterfell, as Robb regroups, the North faces a terrifying truth. The Wall is falling. The threat from the White Walkers grows stronger each day, and the Night's Watch, left without Jon Snow's leadership, is ill-prepared to face the coming darkness. The ancient threat from the North is ignored no longer, but it is too late. The White Walkers march, their icy power unstoppable. Jon Snow, forever tied to the North, is absent when his presence is most needed. Without him, the North is not ready. The rest of the realm remains oblivious to the grave danger that lurks beyond the Wall. The true enemy, the one that could destroy them all, is coming, and no one is prepared. Winterfell lies in ruin. Robb Stark, defeated and emotionally shattered, returns to the remnants of his once proud stronghold, accompanied only by a few loyal men. His defeat has far-reaching consequences. The Northern Lords, disillusioned by his failure and Jon Snow's absence, now question the future of their house and the stability of the North. The Stark banner, once a symbol of strength and unity, now hangs limply in the wind, its meaning diluted by the bitter taste of defeat. Without Jon Snow's wisdom, Robb is left without the vision to rally his people. Winterfell, a place of strength, is now a symbol of the fractured North. The support of the northern houses wanes as they retreat into their own interests, no longer willing to place their trust in a Stark who has lost a war. Robb, devastated by the consequences of his actions and his failure to uphold his family's legacy, retreats inwardly, his confidence shattered. He is haunted by the question, could Jon have saved the North? Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen is battling a new kind of enemy, time. She is no longer just fighting to reclaim the throne. She is fighting against her own doubts. The weight of the crown she so desperately seeks is becoming unbearable. Her journey has led her to Slaver's Bay, where she has won battles, freed slaves, and commanded armies. But the Iron Throne feels like an illusion now, as the reality of Westeros and its political intrigues begin to consume her. In King's Landing, the Lannisters are tightening their grip, and the Iron Throne is within their reach. Tywin Lannister, with the full support of his children, secures the throne with ruthless efficiency. Cersei's desire for power grows ever stronger, and her influence in King's Landing reaches new heights. But her rule is far from secure. The threat of rebellion, both from within and beyond the capital, is imminent. Yet, despite the chaos in the south, the true threat remains in the north. The wall is no longer a boundary between the known and the unknown. It is a last line of defense. The Night's Watch, weakened by Jon Snow's absence and ill-prepared for the coming storm, is beginning to fracture. The ancient evil, the White Walkers, move ever closer to Westeros. Yet, the realm remains unaware of the peril that will soon engulf them all. Jon Snow, absent in this world, would have been the one to sound the alarm, to unite the realms against the White Walkers. But without him, no one is prepared for the coming darkness. The North's ancient foes gather strength, and the realm's leaders are caught up in their own ambitions and infighting. In the south, Daenerys' journey becomes one of survival. Her army, though formidable, is too small to challenge the power of the Lannisters. Her dream of ruling Westeros is slowly turning into a nightmare. The Lannisters are winning, and she cannot afford to make mistakes. However, the growing power of the Lannisters will not go unchallenged. Daenerys will soon find herself at the crossroads of fate. Either she gives up her claim to the throne or wages a war that could burn everything she holds dear. Back in the north, as the White Walkers advance, Robb Stark's last chance to unite the North falls apart. He is unable to gain the trust of the northern houses and struggles with the realization that he cannot protect the realm from what is coming. The bitter truth of his failure sinks in, and he knows the North cannot stand alone. The ancient enemy is here. Winterfell, in its desolation, is but a shadow of what it once was, and the North's resistance to the growing darkness begins to fade. The once proud Stark legacy is lost, scattered across the wind. There are no more heroes, no more champions to defend the realm. Only the bitter reality of what could have been remains. The world of Westeros teeters on the brink of collapse. The Lannisters have consolidated their power, sitting firmly on the Iron Throne, but even they cannot escape the storm brewing in the north. King's Landing is rife with tension. Tyrion Lannister, once the brilliant strategist, now serves as a quiet advisor, his sharp mind outmatched by his father's ruthlessness and Cersei's ambition. But the growing unrest in the kingdom begins to weigh on him. He knows the fragile peace they have built will not last. The war for the throne may be over, but the real battle, the one for survival, has just begun. Daenerys, now deeply entrenched in Slaver's Bay, watches from a distance as the Targaryen dream fades. She has reclaimed cities and freed slaves, but Westeros feels further away than ever. Her dragons are powerful, but they cannot win a war against an enemy as entrenched in politics as the Lannisters. Her supporters are loyal, but the challenges of ruling a continent as complex and fractured as Westeros are too great. The dream of sitting on the Iron Throne is slowly losing its allure, replaced by the harsh reality that the throne may not be worth the price of her humanity. The North, left without Jon Snow, begins to fall into disarray. Robb Stark, broken and defeated, is left with nothing but memories of a war lost. Winterfell is no longer a symbol of hope. It is a reminder of what happens when ambition outpaces strategy, when pride blinds one to the greater danger approaching from the icebound lands beyond the wall. His power slips further away, and the northern lords begin to fracture. Some bend the knee to the Lannisters, hoping to secure their place in the new order. Others retreat into the wilderness, avoiding the chaos of the south, awaiting the coming of winter's fury. The threat of the White Walkers looms over them all, In the frozen wilderness beyond the wall, the undead gather, inexorably moving southward. The creatures of ice and death grow stronger, their cold breath touching every corner of the realm. The wall stands as a fading barrier, a last defense that may prove to be insufficient against the terror that rises from the north. The Night's Watch, weakened and leaderless, is no longer the force it once was, and the realm has failed to heed the warnings of the past. Had Jon Snow been there, had he fulfilled his role as the Lord Commander, perhaps the North could have prepared. Perhaps the White Walkers would have been confronted head-on before they reached the heart of Westeros. But Jon is not here, and no one stands as a united front against the coming darkness. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, a spark of hope still remains. In the ruins of Winterfell, Robb Stark, alone with his thoughts, stands in the shadow of his family's history. He cannot undo the mistakes that have led to this point, but he can fight, just as his ancestors did. He cannot save the world, but he can die trying. His final moments, though filled with regret, are also filled with a quiet resolve. And Daenerys Targaryen, looking across the seas toward Westeros, feels the fire of her ancestors burning brighter once more. The throne may be slipping further from her grasp, but the world still needs a ruler who will stand against the coming darkness. She may never sit on the Iron Throne, but she will not let the world fall into chaos. In this world without Jon Snow, the battle lines have been drawn. The Lannisters, though powerful, are threatened by the tides of rebellion. The Starks, though fractured and defeated, have not disappeared. And Daenerys Targaryen, though far from the Iron Throne, still carries the flame of her people in her heart. As the White Walkers march on Westeros, the realm is unprepared, caught in the snare of its own conflicts and ambitions. There is no one hero to save them. The fate of Westeros now lies in the hands of many, each struggling with their own burdens, their own hopes, and their own desire for power. The Iron Throne, once a symbol of ultimate authority, now stands as a relic of a broken past. The world no longer revolves around one throne. Instead, it spins on the uncertain futures of those brave enough to challenge the coming darkness. The true question that remains is this: will any of them be prepared for the winter that is coming?